Okay, we're back with another episode on the Boomerang, and we have had some progression, which I'm sure you'll be able to see from the last video, and just kind of getting there now, and we do need to be, because I've got about 3 weeks for the deadline on this, so I've made a conscious decision this weekend to actually plough on with this. So I mentioned I was having a week away, managed to get the wings on over that week, so that all set up nicely. Needed to do a little bit of adjustment along the way, and that wasn't too taxing. I had to really kind of move where the engine bulkhead there was. I just wanted to straighten it up, so managed to loosen the joint with some extra fin, wedge a cocktail stick in there and leave it there overnight to set up, and that's done the trick. Sanded the seams and checked those first off, and needed to put a bit of plasticard in here. But everything looks okay. Of course, it's easy to say that at this stage. You don't really know until you get primer on it, but that's my goal, hopefully, for potentially today. But I'm thinking, now I've got these horizontal stabilizers on, I'm thinking that they're a little bit gappy in places, so I might actually, instead of rushing it, just put the filler on and let it take its time to melt down and see how we go. The things I've been looking at now are, I've done the machine gun inserts. Now, they were actually very nice resin pieces, and you do have the 2 holes here that have machine gun barrels moulded in, but as again, the fit was very poor, so I've decided just to try and get that leading edge flush as opposed to anything. So I've sanded through where the hollow gun barrels were, with a view now to, once they're all sorted, to drill back in there and just use a bit of Albion alloys and that, tubing, and that will finish that off no problem. The main issue I've got now is around the light here. So you get a resin insert for the light, and you get the lamp there, which should show up hopefully. And typically the clear part that you've got, which is this kind of bent piece of clear plastic, it doesn't fit over the lamp at all. I'm not even sure it would fit in the gap if the lamp wasn't there. So I've just put it out to a couple of Facebook groups just to see what the consensus is, but I think what I'm probably going to have to do is just cut that lamp out, wedge a piece of clear plastic in, because where you've got sort of that thickness, if you know what I mean. I've got thicker, but that wouldn't quite fit, but I'm sure I could find something a bit chunkier in clear plastic and wedge it in there, smooth it out, wedge it in with super glue, pack the join, then cut it flush, sand it back and polish it. It will then look like a clear light, but we won't have the lamp. But again, I don't think the person that this build's destined for is going to worry about that. I think they'd rather just have what I've just mentioned. But I just wondered if I packed it with super glue or something like that, it might work. Also, I've already looked, there's a couple of suggestions about using clear film. So I'll make a decision on that and we'll see where we go. But overall, it's looking pretty good. So really, next step is going to be to get the airframe into a sound position, i.e. with all the seams sorted, all of the major parts on. That would include these louvers, so that's the next area to look at. I'm pretty happy with the front of the cowling there. I've sanded it off a little bit flush. There was a mention on one of the comments about having the fuselage out of line, but I don't think that can be possible, because there's so many ways that it lines up. I think it's more likely that Special Lobby have actually moulded at the end poorly, so you know, having one a bit shorter. It's the same way that it tends to be everything they do. You get one tight wing join and one loose wing join, and there's no way around it, because it lines up so many other ways. You've got to get the rib, you've got to get the tip and the back and everything. That it means that there has to be a gap there. I've got it on the DC2 as well, so that's my feeling. Cockpit's in there. It's a little bit rough around the edges, I suppose. I'm going to finish that off once I've done everything. So once the outside and the exterior of the model sorted, then I can touch up in there. There's a little bit of chipping in there I'm not massively happy with. We've also got an instrument panel that's going to go into this bit here, but overall I'm relatively happy. Same can be said for the engine in there as well. It's not quite where I want it, but all the bits are in there, so I can finish off from the outside and make that look a bit smarter, and we should be there in no time. So I'm hoping when we get to part 3 we should have primer on, all the parts and major construction finished, and be ploughing on into the paint. I am going to look at the landing gear before I get too far into it as well and get the hole drilled and make sure that's all good before we actually move on. So hopefully that's been an interesting part 2. A little bit shorter, but obviously there's not massive amounts to talk about. So stay tuned, and the next part should be up in a week's time.